Hello, my name is Eric. I'm a software engineer. This is another entry in my Code With Me video series. We're working on our Kanban tracker again. I'm still rocking my Mr. Robot look. And let's get started. If you didn't see the previous video, I'll link up top. We finished some adjustments on our nav bar, and we made this little list of things we still have left to do, which I think is a comprehensive list of the basics. So the first, I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to work on this. No, let's do this edit board modal, right? Which goes along with this 3-button menu, right? So we've got a number of tasks here. Oops. There. Those are the things that I really got to do, split out into task and kind of subtask thing. But be on the board modal. So let's work on that. If we look in here, actually, before I do any looking around, the thing I need to get myself in the habit of doing, I don't have my development server running right now because I need to do some Git stuff. And the process I want to continue to get used to doing is, even though I'm already on it, git checkout main. All right, we're on main. Git pull origin main, just to make sure we have the latest stuff of main. I know I do, but I'm just getting in the habit. And then I want to make a new branch for the feature we're going to make. And then we'll do our pull request later on and all that stuff. Git checkout B. We're going to call this the edit delete board pop-up, right? So edit delete board. Actually, we'll call it edit dash delete board. And I guess that's going to be good enough. So we're switched to a new branch. And now we're going to do our adjustments here on this particular branch. So we'll close this out for now. Now, what do we got here in Figma, right? So let's zoom out to an example here of using this button. So here we can see this button, right? We've got either a white or darker or black menu that pops up with edit board and delete board. And I've got this already. I've got this here with edit task, delete task, right? So what is that actually? I think I have this as its own component. Here's my delete modal, which is the whole giant delete confirmation thing. You know, maybe this isn't on its own thing. Maybe this is just triggered from this button. So maybe I need to make this a component first. So let's go look at my task view card. In here, we've got a lot of things going on. I have a show menu. So this sounds like what I'm thinking of. Sounds like this, right? If we go down here, there's my delete modal, there's my edit modal. Here's my show menu. Right? And this is just saying if show menu is a truthy value, and then this pops up. And right now what I've got in here is edit task and delete task. They're not doing anything. Oh, I mean, they are doing things, right? They're buttons. But I think I'm gonna adjust the way that this works so I don't just copy and paste this code over to a new section. I think I can make this its own component, and then we can reuse that component and send in the props. Because this, we've got an edit task and delete task. And what I'm thinking we can do, let's just jot down some thoughts here to make this its own component, right? We'll make menu a component, edit, delete, task text based on prop, right? So we can pass in a prop that just says like, I don't know, type. Type can be task or type can be board. And that can determine how we do that. The functions are also going to be props, right? Where we can rename them whatever they're going to be, but like we've got an edit and we've got a delete, and it's going to be the same thing on the board buttons up top. You're going to be editing a board, deleting a board. So you've got edit function and delete functions as props. And then the other thing that I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to try something new. Because normally what I'll do is I'll just make this thing right here its own component, and then just have this button here be its own thing. And when you click on this, it'll set, like I'm doing here, it'll set show menu, which is what's happening now, right? If I click on that button, this button, it changes the state of show menu, which right now if show menu is, I mean, it's only ever really going to set, well, actually, no. I can click it again and close that menu, right? So this isn't an actual modal pop-up, so I can't click away from it and turn it off. It's got to be clicking that button, which I guess is fine for right now. But they're separate things, right? And I don't really love that. That should be its own thing. And this button should control this modal popping up or this little box popping up. They shouldn't be separate entities. So I think I'm going to remake this whole thing so that this button is also included, because this button is here as well, right? So why do I need two versions of this button when it can just be one component? So let's see how we want to do that. And let's see if we can make this work out. So what I'm going to start with here is I'm going to route this out. And this is probably going to mess up some stuff in CSS. You know, I'm not using styled components for this, and I wish I was, and I'm not going to start now because I'm almost done. And I'm just one person and I want to finish this thing. But if I were using styled components, I would do some styling for this particular thing because it would just make it a lot easier. But anyway, let's do create edit. Let's make this here. Because I've got my board modal, which handles making and editing a board. I've got my task modal. Delete modal, I guess, should be up there too. I'll move that at some point and remake my, or relink my files. But let's make a new thing here. And let's call this edit delete box.tsx. Not the most creative name, but here we are. All right, and we're going to just do our regular boilerplate. All right, I know I'm going to have props in this thing, but we don't really know what they are yet. And my return, and we're just going to do, you know, just to start us off, just have an H1 of, come on, Emmett. Just an H1, it just says, you know, edit delete box, right? So nothing crazy here. This is our function. We're going to import our edit delete box. Let's see if it can autofill for me. There we go. Let's do ourselves the favor here of, I guess, here's my show menu. Here's my button that controls the show menu. I'm in the view card right now still, right? So I need to make sure I'm understanding I'm doing this and not this yet. So this is what we're going to be adjusting first, and then we'll copy it over to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I know this button is going to be in there, and I know all this stuff is going to be in there. So let's just copy this over first. I'm not going to test a import right now. I've got some extra stuff in here. You know what? Let me just take this whole div and then we'll clean it up. This options wrapper div, right? Because that's what everything's living in right now. And at that point, we won't have an error here, right? So I could, in effect, at this point now, delete all of this, my options wrapper, and instead just do my edit delete box. And it's going to freak out because this has a bunch of stuff in here that we haven't actually imported yet, right? Or any props that we haven't passed down yet, which is our edit modal and set edit modal, which is just making the actual menu pop up, right, of what we're editing, and the delete modal and delete, you know, which is making this stuff pop up, right? So we're gonna have to do it a similar way, because I like that way, because this is controlling in my view task card here. This is showing if delete modal or edit modal for the task is going to pop up, and we'll do a similar thing over here. So those are definitely going to be props, right? And we're not going to call those. Well, I guess we can leave those as set edit modal and set delete modal, because it's still going to be an edit and delete function for the board as well. And the only thing that's going to change in here is going to be show menu. It's going to be controlling its own self, and not the parent isn't going to control show menu, right? And this is going to work the same way, where we see the buttons at all times, but depending on the state of show menu, if show menu is true, then all this stuff displays, right? We can remove show menu from our task view card. We can import, I'm going to let this do this for me. I should just be able to do use state, right? And get the import statement there. Just like we had over here, we bring back our state. And this is already set, right? We have a default of false. The show menu button is going to alternate and set it to the opposite of whatever it is. Actually, this we can see, thank you, is an import that we're missing, which I don't know if this is going to be the right location. We'll bring this over. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. It looks like it's okay. And now the only thing we're going to do is import our props, right? So I've been defaulting to type props. I was advised to use interface because you can extend that if you need to extend it. And when I do an interface, I don't need to do equals. I believe I can just do interface props like this. And we're going to be taking in this set edit modal and set delete modal. And I don't need the status. I don't need the actual state. I'm just bringing in the setter because I don't need to set it to the opposite of the state. I just need to set these to true. That's all this does. So where are my setters? Here's my setter. And this is the thing I'm going to be importing. So set delete modal is going to be that. React dispatch. And same thing with set edit modal. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy those over here. Right. And now I can bring in, I'm using TypeScript, which is why I'm doing that. Now I can bring in my set delete modal and my set edit modal as my props. And these are of type props. All right. I've also got context here, so that I'm going to have to handle in a second. All right. But all that's looking okay. And then if we come down here, now we see my edit delete box is telling me, hey, we're expecting these props here. Your set delete modal and set edit modal. So set delete modal. Can I shorthand this? No. I wish React had the shorthand where I could just do this and it would just work. So that's going to be, are you going to autocomplete for me? No? Great. We'll just do this then. Great. All right. So all that looks like we're doing okay. And then the only thing left over here is that theme, that context, right? Which I have to do a number of things here. We have to import theme context, which let's see if this all matches up for me and gets me to the same place. It looks like it's going to, right? I also need use context here with use state, use context. I'm bringing in my theme context, right? Const theme context equals use context of theme context. And now my theme context is no longer erroring out on me because all that stuff is back and we're in business. So what's going on here? I never restarted my development server. So let's do that. And let's just take a look and see now if the adjustments I made to this task view card, let's see if that's working. So really, had I planned this out better, I would have done a different branch here. I would have just done this as like the edit delete modal, edit delete box modal or something, but I didn't. So here we are. That definitely is something to get better at, right? But let's go here. Let's open this up and ooh, look at all that. Why is that showing up? Well, is my button working? Hold on. Hey, that's still working, isn't it? So that's fun. But for some reason, all this stuff is showing up and I don't know why. Make menu a component. I'm going to close this for a second, just give ourselves a full screen here. Actually, that's in my button, isn't it? So the one I just closed is where it's actually at. This. I see. So for some reason, that's showing up. I don't know that I need these notes anymore. Make menu a component, edit delete task based on prop, delete function based on prop. I'm just going to get rid of that. And that should fix that for us. There we go. Cool. Build UI for onboarding flow. There's our button. That is still working as we intended it to work. But we're not totally done, right? Because we still just have the edit task and delete task as just, this is just there, right? This is static. And we need to make these props as well, right? So the other thing we're going to do here is, I guess what I can do is, we'll just call this type, maybe? What do I like? Sure. I guess we can just call this type, and type is just going to be a string. Nothing crazy. And instead of this saying delete task or edit task, this is going to be, let's make this an object or a template literal. And instead of this, I'm going to have to put this in JavaScript, right? There we go. And then instead of that, this is going to be type, edit type. And then we'll just copy this down here and change this to delete type. And now over here, you can see now I'm being warned that I'm missing type over here. Type is missing. And type here is just going to be equal to task. So when I use that somewhere else, I can set type to board. And let me make sure everything is saved. Save all. And there we go. Edit task, delete task. I see it was lowercase. I don't know if it was supposed to be capitalized. I don't know if that matters. I'm going to leave it capitalized. I think that's fine. But there you go. There's edit delete task. So now I should be able to replace this little button over here with just that component. So let's get out of the view card stuff. We're done with that. Oh, I should have kept that open, but whatever. We'll go back in there in a minute. Let's go to let's open this edit delete box again. This is what we're working with. And let's go back to our nav bar. Here it is. Here's our button, right? That is in this inner nav box that we set up in the last video. And our button sets show add task to true, right? That's this button. And then the button next to it is our burger button. And right now it's not doing anything, right? So what I should be able to do is I should be able to replace, and all this stuff, this has a floating menu that, this menu is only showing up on the smaller viewports. That's this menu. So we're going to leave that alone, right? All we're doing is this hamburger button. We're going to just eliminate and replace with our new component that we just made, which was the edit delete box. We know we've got a bunch of props we need to send in there. We've got this set delete modal, edit delete modal, and type. So right now on this, I don't have my set and edit delete modal. But what we'll do, what do I have here? I've got edit delete box. That's the thing we just added, right? I've got my context, I've got state and use state, I've got a theme toggle, got board list, and I no longer need this burger thing anymore, right? So let's just make some functions in here. Consts, and we can call these the same things. Set delete modal and set edit modal, right? So we can do const delete modal, set delete modal is use state with a default value of false. And then we'll have edit modal and set edit modal also with a use value or use state default value of false. You can see right away this is the CSS value here is changed. Whenever I did in CSS, now it shows a background here. So we'll have to go and fix that, but we'll wait a little bit. Let's switch this around a little bit, right? So now we can pass in things we're being told we need to pass in, right? That we just did, set delete modal, edit delete modal, which will do that. And those already exist in our component, so I don't have to set up prop types again for TypeScript. And then we also have type, which in this case we know type is going to be board. Oops, that's a string, right? Board. So if I click this, all right, so here's a problem, and it's going to be another CSS problem, right? Because all of my CSS that I did for this is just related to this existing within the task card. So we'll have to adjust that too. But this is working, right? We click the button, we get our two buttons for edit and delete board. That's what we want. The next thing we're going to do is these edit and delete board buttons need to do something, right? And that something is, just like they do here, this edit task pops up, and this delete task pops up, which again, I need to fix the theming on that. Delete board, I think, is going to be a little bit easier, right? I've got this delete modal already set up, and you can see I've named some of this stuff directly for removing tasks, right? But this is all set up, and we're just going to reuse this thing. And instead of it removing a task, it'll remove a board, which I don't remember if I already set up the ember function. So if I didn't, we'll just do all that here. But we've got item that we pass in, which is a string, which, you know, you sure you want to delete this task I'm passing in, you know, on this other stuff. We pass in some titles and things like that. So this might require a little finagling on our part, because I don't think right now, oh, you know what? It does know. So our nav bar already has, because of how I've been passing around props and things like that, it already knows what board we're on. So, you know, when you see things like this, where it says, this is board UI onboarding flow, and here we have delete task, and are you sure you want to delete build UI onboarding flow task? I'll be able to pass those props in fairly easily. So let's stop talking about it and let's actually do it. Let us follow along with what we did before, or do something similar, right? So here's my nav bar, and I want to let's look at what we did before in the task view card, right? Where if delete modal is active, then we just have delete modal here, and that's controlling its own background stuff and all the buttons and things. So let's do the exact same thing. We'll do delete modal, because I've got board modal here, which I haven't set up yet to do the edit process. So that's probably going to be its own thing that we do, not in this video. So let's do this. So in navbar, if delete modal, we're working on delete modal. We're in my return statement, and we're going to do a little thing down here where we say delete modal. If delete modal is active, we're going to return the delete modal. Let's do this. Let me start this off a little bit differently. We're just going to do this delete modal, so it's not going to let me auto import. That's okay. Do it the good old fashioned way. Import delete modal from, and where am I? I'm in nav bar, so I have to go up. Oops, there it is, delete modal. All right, so down here, we'll just do a quick comment and do toggle delete modal for selected board. And we know we're going to have our delete modal, which is going to need a bunch of props. And I'm getting this freak out over here, right? Because I am actually outside of my main navbar div, which, depending on where I set this up, might be a problem. We'll find out. But I don't think so, because this is set to fixed, right? There you go. So delete modal showing, here it is. Delete this undefined. I guess part of my problem right now is the menu over top, which is interesting, but that's okay. Right now it's just displaying, no functionality is there, right? So let's, number one, kind of just turn it off, right? So we'll say, like, if delete modal is true, then we display that. Otherwise, we display nothing, and everything is saved. But why aren't we disappearing here? So I just did a quick refresh. My development server is still running. And if we click delete board now, it's popping up for us, right? And I can't, but the reason it wasn't disappearing before is because that was to true, and I don't have a way right now to turn that to false because cancel doesn't do anything. So let's start putting in our props. So we need set delete modal, we need item, we need title, and remove task, which is, we're going to adjust what that is, right? Let's do that real quick so we don't confuse ourselves. So we go in here and we do, instead of remove task, we're going to call this remove item, right? Just to stay in line with the item that we've got. We're going to call this remove item. We're going to call this remove item. And if I go back to my task view card, my delete modal, instead of remove task, is now called remove item, right? And remove task, this function still lives in the task view card, so that's done. And now let's go back to my nav bar. So a delete modal, we've got our props now. We've got set delete modal, which is this. Let's go ahead and just same thing, bring that right in. Set delete modal. What else do we have? We've got item, which item is, we see it says string. So in this case, item is board. We've got, what's next? Title, right? Title, which is a string, but we're going to derive that from what is set as visible here, right? Because we're setting, is it visible? I think it's visible. Let's send visible in there. And let's see what that says. And we also still have the remove item function, which right now we don't have, but we will just pass in a arrow function that's just a console.log, and we'll just say remove board, right? So if I hit cancel on this now, that should close out because that was my previous setup in that modal. Delete board opens it up, cancel, great. Delete this board. We're cut off here, so we're gonna have to fix that. Are you sure you want to delete the platform launch board? That's all working. Awesome, I love it. Let's look at our console. Yeah, it was just from when we were setting this stuff up, so let's clear that. And if I hit delete, then it will call our remove board function whenever we set that up. So cool. I'm jazzed. That's working. That's phenomenal. Let's continue on and let's get more of this done. So how am I gonna actually remove the board? Well, I don't know yet. So in Immer, did I already set up a delete board function? I've got add new board, but I don't have delete board. The way we do deleting in this stuff so far, how I've set it up in the past, like if we're deleting a task, we have our function where we pass in the board data, board index, column index, task index, etc., and then we just find that using Immer, and we delete that task as if we were modifying a big object that isn't state, right? And then we pass it back and update that state. So if we look at our JSON object here, this is a little bit easier, right? Because my boards are in a big array. I can search for the name, and I can find the index based on the name, and then I can delete that particular index if I don't already have access to the index. So if I'm looking at my app, right, and I cycle through the boards, each board has its own index in there, but I want to know, I got to figure out where I want this to live, right? Because if this function is going to be called by a component that lives in the nav bar, then it could just live at a higher level here, or we could make it a hook. But let's just make it raise up what level this is going to live at. Let's do this by name, right? Let's not worry about the index stuff. Also, was called out the other day on doing all of my functions as a let, but they should really be a const, right? So let's just start this off and let's just do const delete board equals, and let's not do anything complicated. Let's go slowly step by step and just make this console.log. We'll say delete this board, right? And I didn't make this a function, equals a function, right? Delete this board. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through navbar. We will send that in as a prop. So we've got delete board. Let's send this through into navbar. All right, it's yelling at me because it's not actually there. This is going to be a void function. I'm not returning anything from this. Let's go into our navbar. Let's add this to our props. Let's check this in. Word wrap this. And let's go down to our delete modal, and instead of just console logging, remove board, we'll pass in delete board, right? Which right now, let's save everything, is just our function back at the app upper level that says delete this board from app level, let's say. And let's just go ahead and make sure that's working. I need my console open. And if we look and we say, delete this board from app level. Cool. That's a start. But what are we deleting? What board are we deleting? Right? So I don't need to look at my delete modal because that's not actually doing anything here. But my nav bar is sending in that prop. And we're gonna update delete board a little bit, right? Because within navbar, we already determined visible is our title. That's where we see marketing plan. And I don't have access to the index here, so let's be creative. So let's update our delete board so that it's going to accept. It has a parameter of, we'll call it board name, and that's going to be a string. All right, so now this is going to adjust a little bit for my typing. And I do have to put that in there. We go back to our nav bar. Let's edit this so it knows. Delete board's a little bit different now. So now instead of just calling delete board this way, we have to set this as function and pass in our visible, right? Because visible is going to be the name of our currently selected board. Now back here, let's go adjust this and let's make this a template literal. And we're going to remove this board and we're going to just say delete board name from app level. So we're in here. If I click delete marketing plan from app level, that's what we're on. Go to platform launch. Here we are. Delete board. Are you sure you want to delete platform launch board? Remove all columns in the tasks and cannot be reversed. Sick. I think that was something that was in the modal 2 that I had previously set up, depending on what type I sent in. Delete platform launch from app level. So we know that's working. We're sending back the title. Awesome. Now what are we going to do? Well, now we're going to do what we're doing here. And we're going to import another function we're going to create from immer. So let's go write that function. And we'll do it right down here under add new board. We're going to do delete a board, right? And we're going to say export, and I should be doing again, const, not let. Export const delete board. Is it the same? I'm calling it the same thing, huh? Delete board. Let's call that delete board immer. Which I wish I used that naming convention for all these things before. Equals a function. We're going to do whatever our code is in here. What I'm going to do is we know we need to pass in the board name that we have, right? So we'll map this out. In our code, we're going to accept board name, right? We're going to search through our board data for and to find the index of board name. Then we'll use our array method and delete that index, right? So just like we're doing with the delete task here, we're splicing whatever task index we found and we're removing one item from that, right? So we're going to splice to delete that index. Cool. So just like all this stuff, I have to pass in board data, right? And board data lives in app anyway. In this function, we're going to take in board data, which is a type of board data, which I had set up way long ago. And we're going to accept the board name, which is just going to be a string value. We know that. I guess I should do const updated board equals the produce function, right? Where I take the board data that we're going to get and we call draft. And then we can do all the stuff that we would be doing normally here within our draft, right? So just like I did over here in deleting a task. Now, instead of, so here I had to find some stuff, right? We use findIndex. So we let column index equals columns array dot find index, and we look through each column. And then for each one, we're looking to see if that column dot name is equal to the task that we passed in here, that status, right? So we're going to do the same kind of thing here. So we're going to say const board index equals, let's look here, right? We're going to have, let's bring our JSON object over here just so we can see what we're doing. So this whole thing is our board index, our board object, board data object, right? So we're going to use draft now though, because immer allows us to edit this draft object. I did a video when I went over immer functions before, and hopefully I remember I'll link that up top as well. Draft dot, right? My boards array dot find index, and just like before, this is also a function, right? Let's look at how we used it last time, where for each column in that case, we basically map through each column. I shouldn't say map here, but we iterate through each column, and then we had just a verification, right? If column name is equal to that. So what we're going to do is we map through this, we iterate through this data, and for each board in that array, right? For each object, which is all this stuff, right? This whole object in this array that goes all the way down until we hit the next board. Here's the next object, right? For each board object in that, we're going to see if board.name, which is this, right? This is board.name. We're going to see if that is equal to the board name that we're going to pass in. And that's it. And as soon as it finds that value, let's say we pass in marketing plan, well, that's of index of 1. And as soon as it finds that name, then our board index value becomes 1. Then what are we going to do? Well, then we're going to splice, right? Just like we did before. We've got our delete task, right? And we just kind of said draft.boards of board index and blah, blah, blah. We navigated down to the appropriate level of this gigantic object that I'm kind of tired of working with because I've been doing this project for a little while now and I want to do something new. And then we spliced it out at whatever our index was and 1. So we're going to do the same kind of thing here. We're going to do draft.boards within our boards array. We're going to do .splice, and we're going to splice out our board index and 1 item. And then at the end of this whole thing, so we're writing our code, we've accepted the board name, we search through, find our board data and find the index of the board name. We splice to delete the index, and then at the end of this, it stores our updated gigantic object in updated board. So we want to return updated board. And that's how that's going to work out for us. So that should be correct. All right, I think all my logic there is sound and accurate. So let's go ahead and before we actually update the state on this, we'll just console.log the entire object. Here's delete board. We're going to import delete board immer, and we're going to store our result. So let's say const result equals delete board immer, oops, not delete board immer. And we know we have a bunch of things to pass. Well, only 2 things to pass in here, which is our board data and our board name. And then let's just console.log result. We can look and see what happens and see down here, we're going to get an object, right? So if we have platform.launch, which is, again, what we're looking at here, right? Boards, and platform.launch is the first board in our array. If we do this and we delete platform.launch, now we see my board array has 3, which are 2, which previously here, we didn't update state yet, it's 3. And if we look at our boards, we have marketing plan and we have roadmap. So that worked, right? Let's do this again and do a second test just so it's obvious to ourselves that this is working out correctly. Let's start with marketing plan, right? And again, here's our platform launch board. Let's click our button up top, delete a board, delete. Here's our board array, and then marketing plan should be gone. Great, it is. So now instead of just console.logging this thing, let's call our set board data function, and let's put our result in there to actually update state. So now, if I refresh this thing and we start with our original data set, we look at platform launch, we bring this up, we'll fix this in a second, delete this board. Are you sure you want to delete platform launch board? This action will remove all columns and tasks and cannot be reversed. Delete. Oh, look at that. It goes away. My modal here is still showing, so we'll fix that too. But hey, that worked out for us, right? That was excellent. Let's do another one here. Delete this board. Boom, it's gone. So we know that's working out for us, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. So let's do some of our minor tweaks here, right? So we're done with the simmer function thing. Let's get out of there. We need to adjust how this delete modal is still showing, right? So if we go back to our edit delete box, where are we showing this again? In the nav bar. So if we go back to our nav bar, and here's our delete modal. Now when I go in here and I do the same thing for deleting the task, I'm deleting the whole task, so everything is just kind of going away because that modal is tied to the task and it's not tied to the nav bar, right? So that's why that's going away. So in this case, we're going to have to do something a little bit different. Right now in remove item, all I'm doing is changing, I'm calling delete board and we're passing invisible, right? So we can just make a do function for this then and have this live here, I guess, maybe, or I guess I can have the modal handle itself, because right now we open this modal and we click the background, it's changing the visibility of that modal. So why not just have the delete button also trigger that functionality? So we could do something like const delete and close is a function where we call remove item, that function, and then we also call set delete modal. We make that a false. So now instead of this just being remove item, we make this delete and close. So let's click out of here. So this should still work, right? That's gone. Task is deleted. My modal is closed. On platform launch, we click delete board. If I click delete, now it's deleted the board and the modal closes. Excellent. That's what we wanted to have happen. There we go. And I'm not going to do edit board yet in this video. What I'm going to do is I've already got this stuff set up in CSS. So let's go see how we have it set and see if we can make a quick adjustment to make this appear the way we want it to appear. I know my previous version was in the task view card, right? And in following with my ID stuff, got an ID here of task view card. So let's go look in CSS and see, because I'm pretty sure I did that originally. And here's task view card, and here's the edit delete thing, right? Is that what I was calling this, right? This was edit delete. This was in options wrapper. There's options wrapper, position relative, right? So I guess in effect, if I take this ID away, and here's edit delete wrapper, so all that stuff is there as well, right? All this edit delete stuff is no longer bound to task view card, but it's its own thing. All right, let's do that. Fingers crossed. Okay, look, I already see it up here now. That's good, right? And this is funky. why it's working in one spot, but not the other. So I wonder if we just take the whole thing, and we're just going to move this for now. I want to put this up here. I wonder if I go back and if I change my edit delete box just to this of options wrapper. If we adjust this to an ID of like edit delete wrapper, right? If we give this whole thing an ID, now instead of this just being a class with all this stuff, let's not call this wrapper. Let's call this edit delete box, I guess. There we go. So now I've got my ID on there, so that's controlling a lot better. And both sections have this. The only problem up here is that it's going off screen a little bit, right? So I don't particularly love that. So maybe what I'm going to do is, let's look at how this is handled here. It's just underneath this thing, right? They definitely appear two different ways and in two different positions. So here in my edit delete box, edit delete wrapper, which really isn't necessary to have both on there, right? But I'm going to leave it for now. This is where all that stuff is contained. So if I take this, let's say, and let's go back down to our navbar section, right? And now I've got a bunch of navbar stuff here. Let's experiment. Let's just throw this here. And this is going to be the navbar version of this, right? So everything else is going to remain the same as it is above. But just my right and my margin top are going to move. So let's just experiment here. So that pushed that down. And it doesn't look like that moved that either, right? So I think we're going to be in good shape because of the selector here now, the specificity. And my right is going to change to what? What, 0? I don't need a right on here anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's okay. I can't see it. And I guess it's raised up a little bit. It looks like my spacing on my nav bar might not be exact to what I've got here, even though I thought it was 96 height. What do I have? $64. Is it different? I thought this was the same across all views, but maybe the nav bar height changes. Here it's 64. And here it changes to 81. 81 in tablet view. And 96. Okay. So my navbar height changes between the views. Didn't realize that before. Let's fix that. So my navbar size is going to change. Nothing else except for height is going to change. And what did I say that was? 81 pixels, I think. And then 96. 81, yes. So my only thing that's going to be in desktop styling for right now, which I don't even have a breakpoint set. There's not a whole lot of difference between 81 and 96. So just for right now, I'm going to just set this as 96 and just leave it. If it causes a problem later on, we'll adjust that. And now we start to see it a little bit. And if I move down, we see that shrink. We see that adjust. The color, I've got the right colors going on there. It's just very matched. And I guess we can go up to my nav bar and go back to this edit delete box, edit delete wrapper, and our margin top we can shrink down to maybe 30 pixels. And it looks a little too close. Let's do 35. And I guess that'll be better, at least for now. Right? Now we've got this working. Oh, that needs to be adjusted too. Where's my delete modal? What do I have this as? ID of delete modal. The class name of modal, right? So that is what's setting my z-index, or it should be anyway. which I thought was on top of everything, but also this is going to be because the Z index on the sidebar, I think, is higher, which I don't think I need that anymore for anything besides this. Right, and the background modal isn't going on top of that either. Here's my sidebar, Z index of 1. So I'm gonna have to adjust my nav. Oh, my nav bar is a Z index of 1. What's my sidebar? Z index. Z index of 2. So I guess let's go up to my nav bar and set that Z index to 2 and see what happens. There you go. So because this modal is being called from navbar, that's the parent component, it's defaulting to that Z index, which was 1, and the Z index of my sidebar was 2, because it's overlapping this, which is an index of 1, right? So now that I'm adjusted basically I had my Z index of navbar was here, my Z index of sidebar was here. So even though my modal was set to like 999 or whatever, it still wasn't hitting that cap of 2, right? It was just kind of 999 relative to the navbar where that was. Now that navbar and sidebar are the same, now it overlaps, and now my modal is acting as it should be working. So, that was a lot, but fun, and we did what we set out to do, and we've got more progress on this thing. So I haven't finished this, right? But we can see we've got a lot of adjustments that we made here, right? A lot of file adjustments here. And we are in our edit delete board branch. So we're going to just git add our adjustments. We're going to git commit with a message where we're going to say add, edit, delete, pop up, and delete board functionality. This might be too long for a commit message, I don't know, but I want to make my notes. Update navbar, Z index. Cool. Git push origin. What did I call this thing? This branch. Edit delete board. There we go. So we've got all our changes pushed up to that specific branch. We'll wait until we're done with all this stuff because we'll do the edit function as well. And then once all that's done, we'll merge our changes into our main branch, and then we'll be totally done with that section. And then we've only got a couple of things to fix and validation, which might be a little bit more work, but we're cruising on this thing. And man, this project's almost done, and I'm excited to be finished with it and add it to the portfolio. So thank you again for joining along with these code along videos. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please reach out and let me know what you think. See you again on the next one.